Why is it not connecting? So it's live on there. I think it should be. Here. Yep. Alrighty, welcome in everyone to this episode of the Bat Flip Podcast. Damian and Matt here with you today, and we are going to be talking about some major series that we have happened this week that has direct playoff implications. We're going to talk about the Orioles at the Yankees, the Mariners at the Astros, the Mets at the Braves, and the Padres at the Dodgers. And then at the end, we're going to talk about quick wrap-ups. We've had some retirements. We had a couple or a manager get fired this week. And then we're going to kind of give a little bit of history and say goodbye to the Oakland A's as they're in their last 3 games, I think, at the Coliseum this week. But before we get into all the Matt, how are you doing this week?
Yeah, I'm doing I'm doing okay. I've been a little bit sick. I had something that's lasted. I mean, I got sick on like Wednesday last week, and I never had a fever, never had any major, but it's just been kind of cold symptoms for like a week almost. So my voice is still a little bit not great. So as Damien and I discussed before the show, it's never great, but it's a little bit worse than normal today. So I apologize for that. But yeah, we're it's been okay. Other than that, I've been just chilling, watching some football, watching some baseball. It's been good stuff. A lot of entertaining things going on in the sports world, which is always fun. So, yeah. How have you been this week, Damien?
I mean, I've been as good as you can be. If you've been paying attention to baseball, you would see that Ohtani hit the 50-50 mark this week. We did our own special episode on that. So if you haven't checked that out, go look at that. We've already had a big time number of views for our channel, at least, off of that episode. So that was a lot of fun, especially as a fan, just seeing what he's been able to do. And by that point, I mean, that was Thursday when he hit that.
Believe we did our was it Thursday or Friday that we had our discussion? It was Friday. It was Friday because Thursday I was. Wait.
No, I think it was Thursday.
It was Thursday.
It was Thursday because they played the Marlins.
Yep.
And he's already hit. That was for 50-50. He's already hit 3 more homers. He got 51 in that game, so he's hit 2 more homers, and he's up to 55 stolen bases already. So he's at 53, 55. So he's been going crazy, which was a lot of fun. He hit the game-tying homer yesterday. Mookie walked it off. So Dodgers are in the running for the number 1 seed again. Actually got that at the moment, but it's been fun just as a baseball fan watching what they've been able to do as they head into this big series, which we'll talk about here in a little bit. But overall, it's been fun. I can't wait for the playoffs. I mean, in a week basically. So it's going to be a lot of fun. But let's go ahead and start in the American League East, where we have the Orioles at the Yankees. As of like last week, we were talking that this was going to be a series for the division. It was a close race. We had to watch these 3 games really closely. It's kind of separated itself a little bit. The Yankees are now leading this division by 6 games over the Orioles, going 8-2 over their last 10, while the Orioles have gone 3-7 over their last 10. But this series does have some big implications still. The Yankees are in the fight for the number 1 seed with the Cleveland Guardians. They lead by 2 games in that aspect right now. And then, I mean, I don't want to say it, but the Orioles, there is a chance that they could drop out of the wild card race. They have the Yankees and then Minnesota, and they are only 4 games up in that wild card spot with Detroit, who's been on a heater recently. Kansas City and the Twins have both kind of fallen back, but I mean, like I said, Twins have 3 games directly head to head with the Orioles to end the season, and they're 1 game out right now. So this series does have some big implications. And looking at the pitching matchups, what do you think there, Matt?
Yeah, so you look at this series, and the Yankees are the Yankees. I don't think have clinched yet. I think they can clinch with 1 win, so that
Yeah,
could throw a curveball in this series because you might see the Yankees play their hangover lineup in 1 game too. But I mean, the Yankees pitching is better than the Orioles pitching. I think. You look at Clark Schmidt, Dean Kramer. I think you give the edge to the Yankees there. The other two are pretty much a wash. I mean, Garrett Cole and Corbin Burns is an incredible pitching matchup that I hope we get to see again in a couple weeks. Um, and Zach Eflin and Cortez are pretty similar too. So, I mean, the Yankees offense with the star power I think just elevates it a tiny bit more, especially against quality pitching. Um, there's more depth with the Orioles, but man, if you got Aaron Judge and Juan Soto in that lineup, it's just so hard to beat them. And the fact that those two guys are currently healthy and seem to be on a roll headed into the playoffs, I mean, it's gonna be tough. And all the Yankees have to do is win one of these games, and they take the division here. So, um, I'm definitely on the side of the Yankees. And as for the Orioles, I mean, like you mentioned, they have not clinched the playoffs yet. They have not. They are still. They still have to make it to. They still have to win a couple games here. Now, you know, they've got a 4 game cushion, so that it would really take them getting swept in both series, or at least going like 1-5 this week, which would to really put them in jeopardy. But they got to win a game or two here, and they're not playing very well right now. They're 3-7 in their last 10 games, and that like you mentioned too, that last week we were talking about this series might be a determining factor in the division, and now it's just kind of an afterthought, as in like as long as the Yankees don't get swept twice, they win. Their magic number's 1. So um, we'll see what happens. I think I think there's a pretty good chance that the Orioles actually win this series here because say the Yankees win game 1, well then you're going to have the hangover lineup, and
yeah.
then you're facing Corbin Burns. So I would be shocked if the Orioles win 2 out of 3 here or something, but I think this series does have a lot more implications for them than it does for the Yankees.
Yeah, I think so too. I mean, like you said, the Yankees need 1 to clinch the division there, and then it's just really the number 1 seed, which I mean that might stop the hangover lineup if they're still in the battle. If
Yeah.
Cleveland wins too, like they might just keep that going there.
I,
Um,
yeah, I think the big thing is with that is if they've clinched the bye already. If assuming that they win, they have they're 7 games ahead of the Astros,
yeah,
so they will have clinched the bye if they clinch the division. So I think that's probably the more important thing. They'll probably rest some players if I had to guess, but I mean you're right. Like that home field advantage could be a big deal for them too if they end up facing the Guardians. So
I mean, especially Yankee Stadium to Cleveland, like
yeah,
they're gonna want that home field Yankee Stadium environment.
for
Um,
sure.
so I definitely think that's still a thought as well. The Orioles, I mean, they have got a couple people back in the last couple days that like they don't sound like massive upgrades, but they got Ramon Urias and Jordan
Yep.
Westberg both back, who though they both can basically insert into the lineup for, I think what Jackson Holiday, he's struggled a lot in the major leagues this year, and I think Kobe Mayo's been playing third, who struggled as well a little bit. So you just get 2 guys who have been playing really well for you. You put them back in that lineup there
Yep.
that were just both activated yesterday. So I mean that can give them a little bit of shot in the arm. But like you said, this series, I mean, it being in Yankee Stadium is also a different
Yeah.
beast there. Um, but I it's tough. But I think the Orioles at least are able to pull out a game, if not 2 of them.
Yeah.
Because the Burns versus Cole matchup, I mean, that who knows, they could both just shove there. Burns has been really, really good as of late. I like Eflin a lot compared to Nestor in this matchup specifically. And then Kramer versus Schmidt, I think it's more of a toss up than anything too. I think they're both solid, but you never know who's going to have a good start or a blow up start at that time. But like you said, the Yankee superstars have been playing better than the Orioles stars have been recently, so that definitely matters. Um, so, we're talking about the Orioles in that kind of wild card matchup there, or wild card scenario. There's still it's another interesting series. It's in the AL West. It's not nearly as impactful as the other American League series we were talking about there, but the Mariners and the Astros have basically clinched the third seed there. Um, but the Mariners are 2 games out of the playoffs. Like you said, they have the Twins right over them, and then the Royals, who have both been kind of scuffling a lot recently. Royals have been 2-8 over their last 10. Twins have been 3-7 over their last 10, while the Mariners have been 6-4. So if the Mariners want a chance at that last wild card spot at all, or one of those wild card spots, they have a big series at Houston this week. Um, they start Bryce Miller versus Hunter Brown tomorrow, and then the other 2 games, the Mariners haven't actually decided who's pitching yet. I don't know if it lines up for Logan Gilbert and George Kirby or not. Maybe it's Brian Wu. I mean, they don't have a bad pitcher to throw in there at all, anyways. And then on the Astros side, they're going to have Framber Valdez and Yusei Kikuchi the last 2 games. Like we said, they're already locked into that third spot. They're going to be playing in the wild card. So, do you think that affects how hard Houston in the lineup that they're going to be putting together? Also, knowing that Yordan Alvarez left the game yesterday and had to get an MRI, and they say it's nothing serious, but he might miss a few games since they know they're going to have to play in that wild card series.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think the Astros really have too much to worry about. If the Mariners swept them, then things could get interesting this weekend. I believe the Astros this weekend have the Guardians, so they've got a pretty tough matchup. Although the Guardians are probably going to be somewhat resting players a little bit, and um, I believe the Mariners have the A's this weekend. So that'll be something to look out for if the Mariners were to somehow come out and sweep Houston, which is that, by the way, is tonight, is game one of that series.
Is
Tonight,
it?
tomorrow, and Wednesday. Yeah,
So I
they're
had it
playing right
wrong.
now. Yeah, they're playing right now. It's 0-0 in the second inning as we speak. Um, but yeah, so if Seattle somehow found a way to sweep this series, which I'll be surprised. I mean, they got the two to be determined starters. I don't know who's in line to start those games potentially. But facing Framber, Kikuchi, and today Hunter Brown, I mean, it's going to be tough to find a. It's going to be tough to sweep that. You would think the Astros, out of those 3 pitchers, would win one of those games. So, um, and one win there for the Astros would put the division away, I think, for the most part. When it comes to Seattle in the wild card race here, it's tough for them because they're behind right now. I mean, they've got, I believe they're how many? I'm not even sure how many games back they are from the wild card. Is it two?
Who are the
2 games
Mariners?
back? The Mariners, yeah,
Yeah, they're 2 games back.
they're 2 games back. So they would, and they're behind to another team too. So
Two
it's gonna be,
scuffling teams, but
yeah. They're scuffling teams, but they are behind them. So, and of course we'll mention in a minute. I believe the Tigers have the White Sox this weekend, so that seems like a difficult possibility that they just have a collapse this week with having
Mhm.
playing the White Sox, and then I think I believe the Marlins play the Twins for a few games
Yeah,
here.
the Royals have Washington and then Atlanta,
Yeah,
and the Twins have Miami and Baltimore.
right. So you would think that those teams won't totally collapse. You would think that they probably, because they both have series that they're way overmatching their opponent, and they'll probably win a couple games of those series, and it would probably take a bit of a collapse for them to fall out. But I mean, it's not impossible for the Mariners. The Mariners' key thing here is just win, win today, win tomorrow, win the rest of your games, win as many as you can, and see what happens. If you go win all 6 this week, then those teams that have to go 4-2 to not for you not to tie them, and I'm not sure where the tiebreakers are at. We were talking just before this, and there's so many teams clustered together. It would take a
Yeah,
day. It'd probably take a computer algorithm to figure out the tiebreaker here. So, um, that'll be something to look out for. But yeah, I mean, I think the Houston will take care of business in at least one of these games here, and take over the division, take the division again, and also you know probably put a death knell for the Mariners. They really have to play close to perfect this week to have a chance. So
Yeah, I mean, the only thing that I think helps kind of benefits them is if they are able to close out this Houston series. Say they even lose one game there, they you're facing or the two teams ahead of you have tough teams to end the regular season, right? Like the Braves, they have everything to play for still. The Orioles, depending on how this Yankee series go, they have everything to play for as well. And I mean, the Tigers, I mean, they have, what do they have again? Just say the White Sox. So
yeah,
there's less of a chance there, but um, there is a shot for them, and they
yeah.
have a much easier schedule there. Through the last weekend, if they're able to handle business against the Astros, who they usually play particularly well against, but it is in Houston, so that might be another wild card thrown into that. But I just wanted to think because they're given how bad the Twins and Royals have been the last week or so, and with how the the Mariners have played decent. I mean, they've been 2 games over 500 over their last 10 games. Even at that pace, though, they would be able to jump them. So I think it was worth noting and putting them into, especially this series with Houston, because this does, given the series we know on the weekend, this is a big series for the Mariners if they want a chance to get in. Um, I had thought the Astros had technically locked up the division already, but maybe I was wrong.
Not
Um,
officially.
not
They're probably
officially.
yeah. And honestly, I'm not sure. I didn't
I
even
thought
look
they
up
had the
this. I
tiebreak.
was gonna say I haven't looked up this tiebreaker yet, but I mean, if they're 5 games up right now. So, um, if the Mariners either way, the Mariners go 6-0, and the Astros go 0-6, then the Mariners would gain 6 games and pass them, and win the division by a game. So
Yeah.
and that's like we said, that's very, very unlikely, but it's not totally out of the realm of possibility. So we'll see what happens. But I'll be surprised if the Astros don't win the division. I will be fairly surprised if the Mariners make the playoffs here. It's gonna be tough because, I mean, as you mentioned, the weekend is in the Mariners' favor schedule wise, but during the week, you've got the Twins playing the Marlins, right, and then the Royals playing um, they're playing somebody bad to start the week too. I think.
The Royals,
Yeah,
they
they're,
have. I
they've
was
got
just
the
looking at it.
national. They're playing the Nationals,
Nationals.
so
Yeah.
you would think that those teams aren't getting like swept in those series, or really they're probably going to win those series at worst, even though they've been struggling. So, um, the Mariners really need to win just about every game this week to have a real shot. So we'll
Mhm.
see though. It's not impossible. We'll see how they finish it out.
Yeah. Sorry, I've been looking up, seeing. I think Seattle, as of right now, has the tiebreaker over Houston,
Yeah.
depending on this year. But
Yeah.
but there is in play with the series. So
Well, Fangraphs gives them a 1% playoff odds, and I would
yeah,
assume that if it was if they had to go 6-0 and the Astros had to go 0-6, then that would be like less than 1%. I mean,
yeah,
so I think that probably means the Mariners have the tiebreak. But
yeah. At that, but yeah, the AL wildcard race is really fascinating. Like we said, there's what 4 teams within 2 games of each other, and then the Orioles, who have been on a collapse recently, and play some tough
yeah,
opponents here this week.
yeah. And while we're talking about the AL wildcard, I do want to highlight the Tigers. We talked about them a little bit last week, but man, what a second half for them! It's pretty remarkable. I was not a believer in them this year, and they've proved me wrong. Winning a lot of close games. The pitching's been outstanding, and today they actually called up their number one prospect. I believe he's their number one, right?
Yeah, I think he's like sixth overall. I want to
Yeah,
say.
yeah. And Jackson Jobe, who was a high draft pick and has been nasty in the minor leagues, and he's been pretty inexperienced, but they're going to give him a shot to pitch out of the bullpen with his elite stuff. Even though he is a starter by trade, and he will be a starter in the big leagues when he's fully in the big leagues. But he had a 195 ERA and 73 innings at Double A. He does have problems with walks at times, but The guy's very, 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 very talented. So
Electric stuff.
electric stuff, and it'll be we'll see if he's able to contribute to them in the postseason here.
Yeah, I mean, if he's out of the bullpen, I mean, that's just electric
Yeah.
stuff. We see all the time starter stuff play up there. He's a guy who already can hit 100 on his fastball. So if he's going, as a starter, so if he's going all out, there's potential there as
Yeah.
well. Has good slider. Um, I would be interested to see if maybe if they get into the postseason and they need a game four starter, if they turn his way, because I mean, right now you're thinking it's probably Skubal, Olson, and then like Casey Mize for game three. But if you need a game four starter, I don't know. So I would be interested to see if they give Job a chance, because I don't know who their other options that they would really trust in that aspect would be. I mean, maybe
Yeah.
Tyler Holton. I mean, Tyler Holton's the other one, but he's not stretched out that much.
Yeah. They've
Um,
got, I believe, right now in their Fangraphs depth charts, they've got Keeter Montero is in the rotation right
yeah,
now, and then I believe they've got Brant Herter in there
yeah,
too, who has actually been extremely good, but he's only
yeah,
started one game. He's been a reliever most of it. I believe he's actually been a guy that's been open for. They've been using an
yeah.
opener for him, and he's pitched 41 innings in 9 games, but he's only got one start. So he's got a 2.61 ERA and a 2.76 FIP right now. So he's been really good for them. But I don't know. I would assume they'd probably go some form of a bullpen game like that. And Jackson Jobe might be a bulk guy in that. They might start
Yeah,
Jobe for 2 innings or something, and then put Hunt Herter in for 3 innings or something to
yeah,
get them to the back end of their bullpen. So that'll be an interesting topic if they get there. But first things first, got to make it. So
yeah. And Montero's been pretty good too. He's had some pretty good games there. But
yeah,
let's jump over to talking about the National League wild card scenario now. And really, what this one comes down to is we have a big series between the Mets and Braves, who is tied. Their division or their regular season is tied 5-5 with each other right now. It's in Atlanta, which is big. And the Braves have lined up their big pitching staff for this. You get Luis Severino against Spencer Schwellenbach, and then David Peterson versus Chris Sale, who's the likely Cy Young Award winner in the National League, going for a triple crown. And then Sean Manaea versus Max Fried. This pitching match, I mean, both of Manaea and Peterson have been decent as of late, but this really favors the Mets or the Braves in this starting
yeah.
pitching.
Yeah, the key is going to be, I think, that game one. If the Braves are able to win with Spencer Schwellenbach in game one against Severino, who's been pretty good for the Mets, actually, but I do think Schwellenbach's a better pitcher. Now, the Braves' offense is spotty at best right now, and the Mets' offense has been better. So that's, I don't know if the pitching matchup's gonna totally be in the Braves' favor, but or the matchup in general is gonna be the Braves' favor. But Spencer Schwellenbach, he's been very good this year. He's had a couple of, he's a rookie, so sometimes these super pressure packed moments you worry about him a little bit. But he has had a few starts this year in these pressure packed type late season games when the Braves were still somewhat contending for the division. He started a big game against the Phillies in what felt like a kind of a must-win game, and pitched very well in that one. So hopefully he's able to continue pitching well in that one. And then the other two. I mean, you look at the Braves have a massive pitching advantage of those other two. Chris Sale against David Peterson should be a Braves win, and then Max Fried versus Sean Manaea will be interesting. Max Fried being he's been not quite the same after coming off the IL. He's been okay. And Sean Manaea has been solid for the Mets this year, but um, the pitching matchups definitely favor the Braves. I think one thing that also might favor the Braves a little bit here is that they're facing two lefties, and right now they have Ozzy Albies, who has just come back from the IL, and he's only hitting right-handed, which is something he's never hit right-handed against right-handed pitching in his career, aside from the occasional like knuckleballer and position player pitching. And there might be like one or two times the guy was like a super soft tosser that he hit right-handed against right-handed pitcher. So Ozzy Albies that favors the Braves anytime you can get his bat in there as a lefty masher, and the Braves have some other lefty mashers. Jorge Soler, Ramon Laureano has been very good for Atlanta. And then you look at RC is way better against left-handed pitching, and that's a big deal. Olson and Harris are really the only two lefties in the lineup right now. Because Kelenick's basically been benched for every game lately. So um, facing lefties is a big deal, and there's one massive monster curveball in this series that just the way that the Braves season has gone this year, it's telling. There is a hurricane expected to be in Atlanta on Thursday, so that could throw all this out the window because who knows? I don't even know how they would do the makeup game. I mean, I feel like there's pretty much no way they play on Thursday. So um, I don't know if they would preemptively schedule a doubleheader on Wednesday, which would be
Yeah,
wild. Or I guess when the wild card series starts on it's the
Tuesday.
weekend, right? Oh, it's on Tuesday, so they would
I
have to
think
play
so.
Monday
Yeah.
against the Mets if the race was still on the line. So
Well, I mean, if
that,
even if it's separated by like one game, you feel like it has to be, especially if the Mets
yeah,
and Braves both win the first two
yeah, the
games, because then
tiebreaker's
they'd
up
be
for
tied.
grabs.
Yeah, they'd be at 6-6 at that point.
Yep.
So it would be interesting because also like them moving, preemptively scheduling a doubleheader that completely messes
Yeah.
up the pitching because
Yeah.
Mania and Freed probably both aren't allowed to pitch at that point.
I think the Braves pitchers have an extra day of rest right
Do they?
now. They do because they started Grant Holmes on Sunday and they had an off day today. So they did because I remember there was talk about Chris Sale regular rest would be tomorrow, and they pushed him back a day because there was a lot of talk about that because he was a little bit fatigued in his last start. It seemed like his velocity was a little bit down, so there
Mm-hmm.
was talk about whether they would start him on regular rest or give him an extra day because the last day of the season then becomes a question mark on Chris Sale being able to pitch. So they wanted to give him that extra day of rest to make sure he's ready to go in this pivotal game against the Mets, and then you can figure out this weekend. So, um, you probably this weekend would be Charlie Morton and then Grant Holmes, I guess, and then
Yeah.
Schwellenbach would start game 162. But it's going to be weird because, like I mentioned, I mean, if you have to cancel Thursday's game, I mean that throws a huge wrench into this, and um, we'll see if it matters. The Braves have to win the first two games, or the first game at least, for that to really matter. I think it's going to be tough to pass the Mets if they go 1-1. There, it's in those two because I don't think I think the Mets have a fairly easy team this weekend, if I'm not mistaken.
They have. I'm
Um,
looking it up.
that's the one thing they
They
have the
have
Brewers,
Milwaukee.
but the Brewers have clinched. So I'm assuming they will probably have been eliminated from the second. They
Bye.
probably have their spot locked up. Yeah, they'll probably be eliminated from the bye by then. So they'll probably have their spot locked up. So that could be an interesting thing with the Brewers and how many guys they might be resting, and of course with the way that the talk's been the last couple years, with all the giving guys having too much time off for the division series, they might be playing their players this weekend to keep them as much in a rhythm as they can. So that'll be an interesting thing to watch out for with some of these clinched teams. But yeah, we'll see what happens with that. But I definitely think that if you're the Braves, you need to win at least two to have any chance, and you really probably need to sweep the series to have a chance. The only other thing to say here is the Diamondbacks are currently tied with the Mets for the second wild card. So there's a chance that the Diamondbacks could have a bad week, and then the loser of this series still gets in. So that's a possibility too. But it would take the Diamondbacks having a pretty bad week for the loser of this series to get in.
Yeah, I mean the Diamondbacks. They do have a tough week. I mean they're facing the Giants and then they face the
Yep.
Padres. Who the Padres there is, depending on how this LA series goes, that we'll talk about here next. They could be fighting for the
Yep.
division. Um,
Yeah. And
so
we were still talking about the Padres last week as being a wild card factor here. Are they going to get in or not? And they've pretty much locked it in now. They've had a insane second half of the season. Um,
yeah,
so
they were 50-50 at one
yeah,
point, and now they're 90-66.
yeah, they've been
So
crazy lately.
Yeah, that's what,
So,
40-16.
yeah, and
Yeah,
I heard a
40-16.
stat. I heard a stat earlier on this race that the the Mets, the Padres, and the Brewers. I mean, the Mets, the Padres, and the Diamondbacks. I believe, if I heard the stat right, have the three best records in baseball, or at least in the National League, since the All Star break.
Yeah, no, there was a time where it was Padres, Diamondbacks, Dodgers were the
Yeah,
top three, and that's how it was crazy because the Dodgers had played like, I think it was like they
yeah,
were 8 games above
yeah,
500 or something, and then they still lost ground
yeah,
in the division race. They had
yeah,
lost like 5 games in the division race to
yeah,
both the Padres and the Diamondbacks
yeah. And
because that's just how insane
the
they
Mets have been
played.
better than that too. So it's been crazy because I was listening. It was a Braves podcast I was listening to, and they were talking about the Braves record is like 24-15 since like the middle of August or the start of August or whatever. So like the Braves have been playing pretty good and have still lost ground because the
Yeah,
Mets have been so good and the other two wild card teams have been so good. So it's definitely this is a pretty wild race and honestly, I mean this is a very good National League because if you look at the standings right now, like the record that the Braves currently have being 2 games out, 85 wins, that's what the Tigers are projected to finish with and get the third wild card in the American League. So the National League, I mean, you're probably going to have like an 88 win team get left out, which
yeah,
is in this, current day of the 6 team, you know, playoff in each league, the 12-team playoff. That's rare that an 88 win team gets left out. So definitely an interesting race here, and it's going to be wild to see this week especially with the weather situation in Atlanta. See what happens.
yeah. It's going to play a major factor into it. But let's go over to talking about the National League West now, where we have the Padres at the Dodgers this week. And this series absolutely lines up for the Padres very, very well. They have probably their three most trusted guys going at the moment: Michael King, Dylan Cease, and Joe Musgrove, where the Dodgers have Landon Knack, Jack Flaherty, and then Walker Buehler. We've talked about them losing Glass now. Yamamoto pitched this weekend and didn't look particularly good either. Knack's been hit or miss. I mean, he's been solid, but I mean, going against a big Padres team, I mean, who knows there? Flaherty, Cease, that's going to be a good game. Um, Bueller has been kind of shaky, but he's looked better the last couple starts. Musgrove's looked dynamite since he's got back from the IL. And Michael King has consistently pitched. Every time they've pitched against the Dodgers this year, he has carved them up.
Yeah,
Um, he's been really really good, especially with that sinker against the lefties of Otani and Freeman. He's kind of carved them really there, and the Padres. I mean, both offenses are kind of playing really really well right now, but it really comes down to this pitching staff and the bullpens. Who the Padres, we talked about what they did at the deadline. Their bullpen's been pretty automatic outside of Robert Suarez, who's been hit or miss here or there. So it'd be interesting to see how they use him in this series, if he's going to be the for sure closer or not, or if they go more to Tanner Scott. But yeah, this series, I think, as far as the pitching matchups are concerned and the way both teams are playing pitching wise, lines up for the Padres very well.
yeah, it does. And I mean, the thing with the Dodgers is that this is going to be the case for them throughout the rest of the regular season and then in the playoffs because Glasnow's not there, Kershaw's not there, Bueller's a shell of himself. Yamamoto's really your only guy, and he's just come back not too long ago and he hadn't been terrible since he came back, but he's been a little bit hit or miss. So Jack Flaherty, you feel pretty good about still, but the pitching's going to be in the other team's favor for the Dodgers right now. I mean, it just is with the injuries they have and the guys they have had that just haven't performed this year as well. So you look at the Padres pitching in the series looks good. I mean, King, Cease, Musgrove, as you said, Musgrove's been awesome since he came back. Um, and I think the thing you just have to remember with the Dodgers is that lineup has got some monsters in it. I mean, Otani, Betts, Freeman, Smith. Teoscar Hernandez has had a good year. Like the list goes on. So, I mean, if you're the Dodgers, you gonna have to rely on that lineup, and and really in this case, I think that it would take a sweep from the Padres in LA to for them to have a chance to win the division, because while they do have the tiebreaker, if they go 2-1, they'll still be 2 games back with the Dodgers having the Rockies, right?
Yeah, but it's in
Yeah,
Coors, so who
it's
knows
in
where
Coors, but I mean, you would expect the Dodgers to at least win 1 game.
you would
You know,
assume.
in Coors. I mean, the Dodgers aren't getting swept in Coors. I'll be, or at least I'd be surprised if the Dodgers got swept in Coors. Let me say
Yeah.
that. I won't put any absolutes on the game of baseball, except that the White Sox suck. But
Yeah.
um, sorry to the White Sox for catching strays there. But
Yeah. Not
um,
sorry. No, not sorry to the White Sox. Sorry to the White Sox fans.
White Sox fans and their players. I mean, come on, like
The
their
players are
players
part of
aren't
the
the
reason.
well. The players stink, but they're not. They're getting put in the big leagues. It's not their fault that they shouldn't be in the big leagues and they stink. Like, they should be in the minor leagues and they're in the big leagues. So I don't blame them for not being good because they're minor leaguers. But yeah, I mean, it's but the Padres, the Padres have locked up the wild card here for. I think they technically haven't clinched yet, but I mean they're going to. And I mean, can they do it? I mean, they've kind of owned the Dodgers at times. I mean, that's
Yeah.
really the only thing that the Padres have done over the last few years in the NL West is the fact that, like, it doesn't matter if they're winning or losing. Most of their games, they're always like super competitive with the Dodgers. So, um, I'm on board with I think this is going to be a good series. I mean, I could very well see the Padres winning 2 out of 3, but I just don't know if they're going to be able to go in there and sweep the Dodgers.
Yeah. I would say there's probably like a realistic possibility. And I know more. Everyone's gonna be like, oh, you're playing Debbie Downer or that, but there has been something to be said about the way that the Padres have played the Dodgers the past couple years. They absolutely tend to dominate them. And even with this one being in LA, like the Dodgers have not shown that they've been able to hit any of these three starters. They've not hit Michael King. They've not hit Dylan Cease. They've not hit Musgrove. And the bullpen has been really lights out against the Dodgers. The Morejon's been good against them. Matsui's been good against them. Obviously, Tanner Scott's going to be really good. Suarez has dominated them. Like, they're just, I don't know if they've shown enough on the pitching side that they're going to make up for it offensively, right? Like, there's always the saying of good pitching beats good hitting, and the Padres have everything lined up to be good pitching right now.
Right, and I mean that,
And they've shown they can shut down the Dodgers lineup. That's part of the problem too.
yeah, and part of that too. The sample size of that is just. I mean, I will not bet against Shohei Ohtani, Freddie Freeman, Mookie Betts. I won't bet against that. To be shut down. I mean, now are they going to lose? They're going to lose some games 10-8. I mean, they are, because the pitching is
Yeah,
not good. But
that's what I'm worried about, honestly.
yeah. But the the fact that, like, they're not gonna. And I feel like the Dodgers in crucial games can piece together enough pitching with their bullpen to be able to still at least win one of these three. I mean, that's what they got to do. They got to win one of these three. They don't have to win this series, really. I mean, they would like to go ahead and clinch, but they got to win one of them. So we'll see what happens. I would say that the Padres probably have a good chance to win 2 out of 3 here, but I'll be surprised if the Dodgers get swept.
Yeah, I think if you're looking at per game basis, I think the Dodgers have to take game 2. I mean,
Yeah,
having Flaherty on the mound there, that one's going to have to be the game. Are they able to get Cease's pitch count up there, get some walks? I mean, that's the way I see
yep.
it happening probably. If Cease is just having one of those games when he's kind of a little bit off and walking a little too many,
Yeah.
that's going to have to be the game for me, because I don't know if you can trust. I mean, Knack's been good, but he's a rookie.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah,
tough.
I mean, and they could cook Michael King or something too. I know you've said he's pitched pretty well against the Dodgers this
Very
year,
well.
but I mean, he's not like a unhittable pitcher or anything. He's good, but he's not like some kind of, like, it's not like you're facing, prime Garrett Cole or Justin Verlander or something. Like, he's good, but he's
They
not
they make him
unhittable.
they make him look like prime Justin Verlander.
Well, they have at times, but he's not like, he's not some unbeatable guy.
Yeah,
Like, he's good.
I get what
But
you're saying.
and Musgrove in some ways is the same way. I mean, he's really good, but it's not. Dylan Cease is tough to hit too. But, like, I mean, you're talking about guys who, like, there's a world where Joe Musgrove comes out, pitches 5 innings, gives up 3 runs, and they crush the bullpen. Like, and Walker Bueller's start, they win. I mean,
Yeah.
it's not impossible. That's why it's so tough to sweep a series. Like, you can
Yeah.
have the pitching lineups in your favor, but there's going to be a game where baseball happens and randomness happens,
Yeah.
and especially when you're playing a team as good as the Dodgers. I mean, you just can never, like, I will never predict a sweep unless it is a team that is absolutely historically bad, like the White Sox. I mean, like, I wouldn't predict the team to sweep the A's. I mean, or the Marlins, maybe even. Like, some of these
Yeah.
teams. Well, I guess the A's aren't really all that bad. I mean, they're
They're not that
bad, but
bad.
they're not as bad as, everyone talks about the A's being the worst. Well, they're not the worst in their own division, I don't think. I think they're ahead of
No,
the
the
Angels,
Angels, they are.
um, but yeah, I mean, they're but either way, the sweep's going to be tough. Padres probably win the series, get that top wild card spot, which they'll get to host the wild card series is a big deal for them against either Arizona, New York, or Atlanta. So that would be pretty cool too. Arizona and San Diego in the wild card.
Well, they
Um,
face off this
they
weekend
face
too.
off
Like
this weekend. They might
they
play.
might,
They might
yeah, they
play
might
each
play
other
six
six
games in a
games in a
row.
row. Yeah, that'd be crazy.
There's a shot, but
Yeah. By
um,
the way, there's no hurricane affecting this one, is there?
I don't think there's a hurricane. Um,
There was last year.
yeah, I mean, maybe an earthquake. Who knows? You never
I
know when
hope
those are
not.
coming.
That's true.
Um, but yeah, but you kind of gave us a good segue there. I mean, that's going to wrap up basically the us talking about these series. That's pretty much what we had. There's some big series to watch for. The Astros one, I guess, started today. The rest of these are Tuesday through Thursday, so those are definitely ones to tune in there for. But before we wrap it up, I think we want to hit on a couple other things that have happened this week, and then we'll save the Oakland A's thing towards the end. But we've had a person get fired. We've had a person announce their retirement. And then I think, because I didn't really put it on here, but I think the funniest one of all that we have to talk about is we've had a player get demoted for staying out at a casino.
Oh God, that was cracking
Uh,
me up on Saturday.
yeah. So there was a report that CJ Abrams, shortstop for the Nationals, had been out at the casino too late, right? Like until like what was it, like 8 a.m. or something,
Yeah, it
or
was.
six, sometime.
Yeah,
I forget the exact time, but he
it
was
was
there until
sometime
the next
in
morning.
the morning. Yeah,
Um, and somebody said like fade him today, and then he proceeded to go out there
yeah.
and go like 0 for 4. And then the
Well,
next day it came out that he was demoted to the minor
yeah.
leagues. And there's pictures of him being in the casino and everything, but boy, is that just a funny scenario. And then to wrap it up, to make it even funnier, the day they demoted him, the Nationals posted a lineup that was sponsored by BetMGM.
Yeah, yeah. That
Um,
seems to always happen, doesn't it? Like
yeah,
every time there's a gambling issue, there's something sponsored by. We're going to talk about the Shohei Ohtani's translator getting suspended or getting arrested for illegal gambling, powered by MGM. Like
yeah,
it's funny, but yeah, I mean, as for CJ Abrams, I honestly think this is a little bit of a important thing to put into his um into his profile here. It's just that he's really, really he was good in the first time. In fact, he made the All Star team, didn't he?
I believe
I think
so.
he made the All Star team. Yeah, so he was really good in the first half of the season, but he has been atrocious in the second half. In the second half, he has a 64 WRC plus after putting up a 129 in the first half. His walk rate's gone way down. His strikeout rate's gone up. He's not hitting for any power anymore. Um, and his defense is horrible. I mean, his defense is like, I mean, it's bad. So, um, at shortstop. So you wonder. I was wondering what the heck was going on with him, because he had looked like a breakout player in the first half, and then the second half, all of a sudden, he's awful. And I've always wondered if there was some maturity issues with him, because so many of his things are focus issues, stuff like
Yeah,
just booting the ball at shortstop on a routine grounder after making a ranging play like deep in the hole and throwing a guy out. Like, he makes some crazy good plays, and then he just boots the most routine things. And so obviously there's been something going on with him because, I mean, it shows a pretty big lack of maturity. You've got literally your team's not making the playoffs. You literally have one more week to be a professional and show up and play baseball, not hungover or not having stayed out all night. You just got one more week to show up and play baseball, and then you can go stay out all night as much as you want to for 3 months. So, I think it's unfortunate that he would make that decision. And I mean, I don't know what his future holds. This has got to put a pretty big damper on his future with the Nationals. Is in like, I wonder if they tried to trade him in the offseason. It reminds me a little bit. It's different, but in some ways it reminds me of when the Guardians fell out with Trevor Bauer when he threw the ball into the outfield after they got pulled out of the game, and the manager and him were at odds, and they're like, "We're just trading him next week. It doesn't
Yeah.
matter how good he is." And CJ Abrams is kind of that same way. It's like, you know, he's at odds with this organization pretty massively now. I think there's a chance he doesn't return to them next year, but we'll see. They might talk to him and get on the same page with him and give him another chance to mature and everything. But he probably needs a change of scenery, to be honest, after stuff like that happens. So, um, unfortunate. I hate it because he was looking really good here early in the season, and really for the first half of the season, it was more than just a couple weeks sample
Yeah.
size, and he was looking great. And then all of a sudden, he started playing bad, and now you've got this controversy at the end of the year. It's going to be tough for him going into the offseason.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I would assume that the Nationals probably just give him another chance. Just hope that this was the wake up call for him, and probably closely monitor him moving forward for a little bit of time at least there. But maybe this is the wake up call he needs for his maturity issues or whatever it is that is hampering him to do that. But like you mentioned, I wanted to point out to his splits what it was like between the first half and second half. So first half of the year, 268. 343, 489 for an OPS 831 and a WRC plus of 129, right? So legitimately good player at that point. You talk about the second half, a 203 batting average, a 260 on base, a 326 slugging for a 586 OPS and a 64 WRC plus. There's been a direct correlation.
Yeah.
I mean, you could see, and this kind of makes a lot of sense if this has been something that's been going on. Um, more recently. So hopefully it figures out for CJ Abrams because he showed the talent at the beginning of the year that he could be an all-star caliber player. He was having the breakout. I've always been a fan of him as a prospect, and then heading into this, I've been super hyped over the other two guys on this podcast. So I really hope that he's able to figure it out because I think he has star potential. He's just got to get everything in line, and he's still 22 years old or something, 23. So there's still plenty of time for him to figure things out here.
Yeah, there is. He's still young, as you mentioned. He got called up extremely young before he was ready in 2022. So he's young, and it's just a matter of as we said, like just he's got to mature, and whether that happens with the Nationals or somewhere else, it's got to happen for him to be successful. I mean, there's a world where he ends up being a lefty Trey Turner. I mean, there is. He's got that kind of talent. It's just a matter of, I mean, you can't do the things that he's doing right now and also play very poorly. Now, I guess if you're absolutely killing it at the plate and going out every night, they're probably not going to care as much. But if you're playing poorly and then you all of a sudden are staying out all night, not being engaged in baseball, then it's a problem. So
Yeah. All right. So let's talk about which one do you want to go to first?
yeah, well, just while we're talking about individual players, just a couple guys I wanted to mention. We've got Charlie Blackmon retired today, or announced his retirement. He's retiring after the weekend, and the season ends. He's a very, very solid player for his career. He's one of those guys that's probably, he's not a Hall of Famer by any means, but he had some really good years in there. 2017 put up a 142 WRC plus, hit 331 with a 399 on base, a 601 slugging with 37 homers. Granted, that was at Coors Field, but he put up 5.4 WAR, and that 142 WRC plus that is ballpark adjusted.
Yeah.
So, um, they still believe that he was that much better than the average player that year. And a guy that, has always been very good at, spraying the ball around to all fields, and just one of the better contact hitters we've had here over the last 15 years.
Yeah.
Been a big piece. He was a key piece for some pretty good Rockies teams. I mean, they made the playoffs a couple times with him there. You know, definitely some good offenses. Him in that lineup with Carlos Gonzalez and Nolan Arenado and DJ
Story.
LeMahieu and Trevor Story / Tulowitzki. Like I guess Tulowitzki was still at the end of his run there when Blackman was starting to get pretty good. So definitely an interesting player and a solid one. And put up 20 WAR for his career, which is all you can ask for a guy when you pick him up and draft him. And definitely a good player. And he's going to be one of those guys that he was a career Colorado Rocky. He did not
Yeah.
play a single game for another team, which is pretty cool as well.
Yeah. He'll be a Rockies Hall of Famer. I mean, he's going to probably end up with at least 1,800 hits. He needs 3 hits over the last few games, which I assume because he plays the Dodgers,
Yeah.
which means he's going to get like 7. He's tormented LA. He has 226 homers, 292 average, 352 on base, 479 slugging for some career numbers there. Just 148 stolen bases too. Like you said, he's been a career Rocky. He's going to be as one of those guys, Rocky Hall of Famer, face of that franchise, somebody that will always be remembered and adored there. And outside of being a Dodgers fan, I can understand what Blackman's meant to that team. Especially, they had those good teams, and then he kind of stuck it out through these couple rough teams. They gave him an option if he wanted to go somewhere else, to try and win, and he said he wanted to stick out his career there. So really admire what Blackman has done for that team. So
Yep.
definitely a shout out and definitely a great career through these 14 seasons that he's had there.
Yeah, he's had a great career. But yeah, moving on. There's a couple other players I wanted to mention, and these guys haven't announced their retirement, but they could be in the realm of retiring. I think one of them there's a pretty decent chances, and the other one I kind of doubt, but it's possible. First one is Justin Verlander has been really bad this year. He's got a 5.55 ERA on the season, and the peripherals are not much better. He's not striking guys out anymore. He's walking more guys, giving up a ton of home runs. The velocity's down. He's dealt with injuries a little bit this year, and he has really collapsed down the stretch as well. And there's a pretty good likelihood that the Astros do not put him on their postseason roster. I saw a post the other day on X, Twitter, whatever we want to call it these days, and he had a it was basically a look. He's probably not on the postseason roster, and I think he's got that vesting option that I do not think is going to vest next year. I think it's
not.
so he's going to be a free agent, I believe.
Yeah.
And if he's a free agent, I don't know that a team's going to pick him up. So he could probably come back on a minor league deal or a 1-year cheap deal if he really wants to, kind of like what Adam Wainwright did his last year. But I mean, if I were Verlander, man, you're 41 years old. You dealt with injuries again this year. You don't want to go. You don't want to come out and do that. Have that last that year that was like that last year that Wainwright had. I mean, if you were really close, I know Wainwright really wanted to get to that. I think it was 200 wins for him that he wanted to get to, and I know Verlander he's too far short of the 300 wins. He's at 261, which is absolutely insane in today's game. And I'm sure that he would like to try to get to 300 wins, but that's very, very unlikely. He would have had to have a pretty good year this year and then 2 more. And after this year, I don't see him winning 14 or 15 games in a season again, and not doing it twice at least. I mean, you never know with wins. You just get super lucky to win a bunch of 8 to 7 games or something. But yeah, I mean, it's unfortunate that he's going out like this, but it's just the thing to watch for. He's going to get one more regular season start, so kind of look out. This could be Justin Verlander, who is a Hall of Famer, who's won an MVP, won a Triple Crown, has put up 82 WAR in his career. It's very possible that he makes his last start as a big leaguer this week. I'm not saying he will. I don't know what he's going to do. He hadn't announced anything, but I would not be shocked. So it's just kind of something to look out for. Might be the last chance to see him. And then also, we should have mentioned earlier with the Orioles, Craig Kimbrell got DFA'd. And this is like 3 years in a row of him being pretty rough. And I don't know. I'm assuming that he will probably come back on like a 1 year deal with somebody or maybe even a minor league deal. But you never know. He might just call it quits too. I don't know what he's going to do, but um, it might not be worth it to him to come back on a minor league deal for somebody. So we'll see what happens with him too. But he got DFA'd. He will not be in the rest of the regular season or in the postseason for Baltimore. And kind of hate to see that. I like Craig Kimbrell. He's a good he's been a really good reliever for a long time, and he might be a Hall of Famer. It's kind of hard to say with relievers, but definitely just wanted to shout out those guys.
Yeah, and while you're mentioning it, like I know this is gonna be a homer thing, but I'm not entirely sure what the thing is with Kershaw. I mean, I know he has an option, but
Yeah.
he's also battled some injuries. There's a chance he's not on the postseason roster either. He might get a start in Colorado,
Okay.
potentially. He threw like an 84 pitch bullpen the other day, which was crazy.
Good
Um,
God.
but there's a chance he might get a start, but there's a chance he doesn't, and I don't know what the postseason roster stuff would look like. I mean, he might be on eventually, but there could be a shot here
Yeah.
too for that. But um, yeah, all of those I think are very deserving of that. Definitely with Verlander, he's been one of the greater pitchers of our generation. Kimbrel was one of the best closers of our generation too. Like they definitely deserve some shout outs for sure to maybe potentially seeing if they're this is the end of their career. But one thing else I want to talk about too, which happened today, is the Cincinnati Reds announced that they had fired manager David Bell, who they just gave an extension to this last offseason for 2 years. Um, the Reds have kind of underperformed some stuff this year. They were 76 and 81. His total record overall is 409 and 456, 473 winning percentage. Really, these were rebuilding Reds, so I don't think you can really take the winning percentage all for not. They finished 82 and 80 last year. They've battled some major injuries this
Yeah.
year. So I don't think this is completely fair to David Bell. There is some stuff that there was some organizational differences. I never know what that really means at the end of the day. But there's already been a little bit of rumblings that they're going to look to Skip Schumacher, which that's going to be a
Makes
big thing.
sense.
But
Yeah.
I mean, every team's going to be eyeing Skip Schumacher this year, and I don't know if he would want to come into a team that is like this, that is kind of still on that periphery a lot. I mean, he might want to go more to a contender like potentially the Mariners or something. But anyways, it's just a little shocking to me that David Bell, I felt like he did a pretty good job for what he was given at times. And considering what they had dealt with this year, I felt like he deserved at least another year
Yeah.
of a shot there. But yeah, he was let go today.
Yeah. I mean, I don't think it's totally egregious to let him go. I mean, he's got a 409 and 456 record, 473 winning percentage. He 2023 was really impressive for that team. Got a lot of young talent. They probably want somebody who will mesh a little bit better with the young talent, if I had to guess. David Bell's a former big leaguer from several 20 years ago that maybe isn't quite as I don't know. I don't know too much about him personally, but I guess it's possible that he's not as doesn't relate quite as well to these young guys. So and for that matter, I mean the Reds are a small market team that put a little bit into this team this year. I mean, their payroll's still not really high, but I mean, they signed a few guys in free agency. They signed Frankie Montas, Jamer Candelario. They did a few things in the offseason to try to boost this team up, and they underperformed what they did last year. Granted, like you said, injuries were a very large part of that. So I don't totally blame David Bell for that. But, anytime you see a team that kind of underperforms what they're kind of expected to do, you kind of think that you might take a look at the manager might be on the hot seat a little bit. And David Bell with this, his record and stuff, I probably would have given him another shot. But it's just hard to say when it's a situation of the the organization and what they think of him, and he's kind of one of those borderline guys. Like if you think he's gonna be as if you think he's really really good, he's just kind of been dealt a poor rosters. Then that's one thing. If you think that he's fine, but he's probably not the best fit, then it's a good time to move on from him. So definitely, definitely be interesting to see who the Reds bring in. They've got a talented young core, and they've got some good pieces. And if they can be healthy next year, they could probably compete. Depending on what they do in the offseason, they have some holes they need to repair, but we'll see what happens. I think it's going to be an interesting final. An interesting offseason for them and who they get to replace them.
Yeah. So lastly, I wanted to just take a minute and talk about the Oakland A's and their last series in Oakland, which is, I believe, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday against the Rangers, and just kind of highlight what they have done since being in Oakland, and just take a moment for that city, and that, because it really is the end of. They were a pretty historic team through their history in Oakland. I mean, they've been there and in the Coliseum since 1968. You're talking about a team that's won 4 World Series since then. They've won 17 division titles. They have 4 wild card berths in their history in Oakland. I even added it up to today's date. They are 46-12, or 4,612 to 4,383 for a 536 winning percentage. They've had some historic moments, historic players from Dennis Eckersley to Ricky Henderson to Reggie Jackson. I mean, they have history in there as well. The Coliseum's been around, like I said, since 1968 here. It's not been the most upkept. It's not the most pretty, but it is historic. So I think it's a little bit of a sad scenario that we're actually here at this moment. I mean, we've talked a lot about this situation over the past couple years, about where they were going to go, if they were going to get a new stadium deal, when they had thought they had a deal and it fell apart. And then now that this is just the actual official goodbye, like, this is really weird. I mean, when was the last time we really had a team relocate from their current scenario in baseball, I should say?
I don't.
What is it, the Nationals?
Probably, yeah.
From
That's the
the
only
from
team that's the only they haven't had a franchise. We haven't had an expansion franchise since then either. So that would be the last one.
Yeah, so I mean, you're talking about what,
Uh,
early 2000s? Was it
yeah,
2005?
2005, I think, was
Yeah.
their first year in Washington.
And this, like I said, this is not just a team that doesn't have much history. This is a team who has had a decent amount of history in this place. So I just felt like we needed to take a little bit of a moment here, since this is the last 3 games there, and just highlight what Oakland has done for the A's and what the A's have meant for Oakland.
Yeah, it's definitely a bittersweet
Yeah.
week for them. I mean, it's good to go back and look at some of the memories there. I mean, they've won World Series titles there. There's just been it is a historic place, and it's such an interesting situation there with the Oakland Coliseum. I mean, it was a pretty decent stadium when it was built. It's old. It was built, I believe, it was built in what, 1966.
It opened
It,
in '68.
yeah. So to put that into perspective a little bit, the in 1966 was the year that
That's when it opened. Yeah.
yeah
Sorry.
that was the year that the Braves moved to Atlanta, and the Braves have been through 3 stadiums since then. So just puts it in perspective how far behind the A's are with the stadium stuff, and they've had it's also had a ton of different names.
Yeah.
And that's been interesting. And it's one of those things that I think it was a pretty cool stadium. It almost had a little bit of a Dodger Stadium type thing to it before they put that stupid upper deck in the outfield to accommodate the Raiders, and then they turned it into a true multi-purpose type stadium. And this is the last one. I think this is the last multi-purpose stadium in baseball. the Trop, I believe, was built purely for baseball. Even though they have played football games there, it's not built to have host football games. And I believe Toronto is also the same way. So there's no more, that was such a big thing for a while, like Pittsburgh, Cincinnati. You had the Candlestick Park. You had the Atlanta Fulton County Stadium was multi-purpose for the Falcons. You had um, the Dolphins and Marlins Stadium, whatever. It changed names every year too. So this is really the last multi-purpose stadium, and it's good to see those phased out because they're terrible for every sport that's there. It's good for a city because they can build one stadium and it hosts every sport, but it's absolutely terrible for individual sports. It's a terrible place to watch a game. Like, I mean, I can't imagine. I've never been to a game in Oakland, but I can't imagine sitting as far back as you have to sit from the action in that stadium. I mean, it seems to be ridiculous, but um, it's going to be historic. It'll be remembered. Obviously, the A's moving on. There's a lot to talk. There's a lot to unpack with that. We've talked about that a lot. I saw that
There'll be more.
Yeah, there'll be more. There's going to be more drama with it too. It's not going to be they're going to go to Sacramento for a couple years and then immediately go into Vegas and it's all going to go smoothly. That's not going to happen. It's going to be some kind of drama involved here. There's going to be some kind of something's going to happen with that. And I saw John Fisher put out a long statement thanking Oakland and the fans of Oakland, and they were like, seriously, come on, man, just get out of here, just be done with them. So it'll also be interesting to see if Oakland tries to build a new stadium to attract an expansion team too. There's been some talk about that, but I just don't think Oakland's market will work anymore.
I mean, this is a long-winded conversation for something else another time. But
we need to talk about it later.
But part of the issue, I'll wrap up real quick, is that Oakland has to allow public funding.
Yeah,
that's the whole issue. Yeah. The A's were willing to, and John Fisher was willing to pay for part of it, but Oakland was not. The people were not. Publicly funded stadium. So I hate that this happens. I wish they would have stayed there. I wish they would have come to something. But at the end of the day, I'm just not sure. And then also, like you said, Oakland as where it's located and everything like that, there's going to be so many other cities that are probably ahead of the list for expansion.
I mean, you got, even, obviously Vegas, but, you look at Nashville,
Nashville, the Carolinas, you're going to have Portland, you're going to have probably Montreal,
Utah.
I
don't think Montreal will get one, but Utah.
And they're going to be in the conversation.
They might. They're gonna be in the conversation for the reason that they have had one before. But
I just think those are going to be all options over Oakland.
Yeah, there'll be options for sure.
That's going to be it. So
it's Sacramento. I mean,
potentially, yeah.
Yeah,
they'd have to build a new stadium, but
they would. But with the A's moving there, I think there's a world where this thing falls through in Vegas and they stay in Sacramento and build a new stadium there, or Sacramento, supports this team very well and kind of becomes a candidate to get that expansion team. Yeah, I mean, there's a world where that happens. So
because the Vegas deal isn't signed yet. So
Anyways,
felt like that was a good opportunity just to say goodbye, I guess, our goodbyes a little bit to Oakland. So next week, before our next episode, the season's going to be over. These races will be decided. So make sure you tune in for all of that. And I believe next Monday, we should be back with wild card predictions. It's postseason time and we are going to be on the run, recording all kinds of different days and trying to bring you guys as much content as we can. And we'll figure some stuff out. Maybe we announce some other things here and there, but it's going to be October baseball, which nothing better than fall baseball here.
That's right. We're excited and it'll be fun.
Yeah, and hopefully David will come back one of these times. So we
haven't seen David in a month. I hope he's okay. I mean, he seems to be trying to just ditch us. Honestly, I mean, it doesn't seem like he's got too many things going on. He's just like, I just don't want to. I just don't want to talk to them. So
that's what it seems like.
I
don't want to be around.
David sucks. So.
I'd rather just go watch Clemson or something. I don't know.
Oh
David
God,
sucks.
David does suck.
Yeah. So, anyways, that's good way to end this episode off. So, thank you guys for tuning in, and we will catch you guys back next week with wild card predictions.